This rucksack to me is one of the best pieces of equipment the Army's ever had.
Oh my God! It sucks the life out of you.
This is the large Alice ruck.
Oh, so he got to use the Alice ruck. It's the worst rucksack ever designed by man.
We wanted to know how professionals have changed over time, so we got different experts from multiple decades to share their experiences.
Special Forces is Army Special Forces. That's the Green Berets. That's these guys right here who wear this.
So this is Captain Gillespie during the Vietnam War. And of course he's wearing his Green Beret. In those days, the Green Beret was a field hat. You wore it in the field, in the jungle, wherever you were at. Now we don't. It's not a very functional hat, so out in the field, it doesn't block the sun. This is more of a modern one because you see there's no liner in it. The old ones had a liner in it, even though guys took them out.
I cut the liner out of it. Now they sell them without liners, but like back in the day, that was like a big time no-no to cut the liner out of a beret. Now during Vietnam, what the guys used to do is they would cut the liners out of their berets and sew their girlfriend's panties inside as a liner. So there was a liner inside the beret.
The flashes represent different groups. So you got first group, you got 5th group, 10th group. There's 2 for 10th group here because they're the best group. I was in 10th group. You got 3rd group. Here's another one from 5th group, and then 19th and 20th group on the end. Yeah, this one's mine. So I've got a different flash on this one actually because my last role was at Special Operations Command, Africa. So this flash represents Special Operations Command Africa.
This is the one I had when I retired because it's got my Colonel's Eagle in there. But this flash is interesting because this is the one from the 46th Special Forces Company that was actually in Thailand in the 60s and 70s. But they had their own flash. These are the colors of the Thai flag.
So this one is a version of the 1st Battalion flash with the SOT logo on it, which I always thought was cool, but I changed it a little bit when I designed mine. This one is the German version because it uses the German skull instead of the skull that's on the original one. However, like you can see, you have the German flag colors on the flash, and that was specifically for 1st Battalion.
And the tan beret is Ranger Regiment. So guys, the special operators who serve in the 75th Ranger Regiment wear the tan beret.
At this time, we were actually wearing this, mostly the OG 107s, which we love this uniform. It was cotton, it wasn't heavy, you could carry a few of them in your rucksack. We loved them, but the Army didn't like them.
This is your woodland camo that came out with the battle dress uniform, BDUs, in the 80s and lasted all the way through the 90s into the 2000s with a really stupid pattern that doesn't blend in with any terrain anywhere except for your grandma's couch.
This is an older picture, for sure.
How can you tell?
Because of the uniforms. These are the old DCU uniforms, the desert camouflage uniforms that were phased out in the early 2000s.
Got an aluminum frame. It's probably cheap to make. You can modify it, and we would have extra pockets sewn on it. On mine, because I was the camo guy, on the side here, I'd have this long pocket sewn on the side because you would fold your antennas. I could put my antennas in there. You could carry candy bars, you could carry rations. If you were going in to do an HADR mission, we knew they were short on food. We knew that the guerrilla chief liked Jack Daniels. Or you could carry explosives, C4 blasting caps, ammunitions, mortar rounds, extra batteries, you name it. So you can go in, you can build rapport, you can save the world, or blow up bridges, destroy houses, kill people, or just burn things down and cause mayhem.
What's your favorite piece of equipment?
My skis. When I got to 10th group and found out that, oh, hey, we get to go skiing? Really? Cool. Way different than civilian skis. You expect to have the same amount of support that you would have in civilian boots? Yeah, that's not going to happen. And you usually wind up on your ass. Snow grenade gets you, you explode on the slopes, your equipment goes everywhere.
What's a snow grenade?
That's when you're just skiing along and you catch an edge the wrong way or whatever, and you just go into a downward spiral and bam, you hit the ground and snow goes everywhere and equipment goes everywhere, and technology has gotten way better. So guys have some really cool equipment that we just dreamed of having when we were around.
This is my favorite piece of equipment. This is the Bradley fighting vehicle. That thing's a beast. 25 millimeter cannon. It's got 7.62 caliber machine gun, and it's got 2 tow missiles. There's 230 rounds in that main gun, and you can fire that gun 3,000 meters. But the nice thing about this Bradley fighting vehicle is you can drop that ramp, and you're gonna get 6 guys coming out of the back pretty pissed off, ready to go take the fight to the enemy. And that's why it was very feared in Iraq. This is a Yarborough knife. Every one of these knives is numbered, and every Green Beret's number on their knife is unique to them. And they're given out in this carrier that is called an Alice pack. You know, this was your last line of defense. When your rifle fails and your pistol fails, and you gotta go to the knife, well, this is what you got.
Carry these
I didn't carry this.
today? Does anybody carry these?
I don't know anyone who ever carried one. You kind of reserve this for your trophy room.
So in Thailand, they still had Chinese-backed communists up until the late 80s. Part of our effort in Thailand was to beef up Thai special forces, in some cases conventional units, in order to fight in insurgent-prone areas. So we were helping Thai special forces train local militias, what they called Tahan Pran at the time. And the Thais at that point were probably much more experienced in counterinsurgency than we were. We probably got a lot more from them than they got from us.
Back in the 80s or pre-90s, let's just say pre-90s, you pretty much knew who the bad guys were. You had the Warsaw Pact countries and the Soviet Union, those were bad guys. You could identify the equipment, you could identify their uniforms, you knew who they were. I was working in the early 90s when the Soviet Union basically fell apart. The whole dynamic changed. Things got a little bit blurred because you weren't really sure, you know, who are the bad guys, unless you're talking about like the first Gulf War. Well, it was the Iraqi army. We knew who they were. They had Iraqi army equipment. They wore Iraqi army uniforms.
You asked what is the difference between fighting communism, we talk a lot about that now, peer-to-peer fight, the threat from Russia, the threat from China, nation state on nation state. Special operations mission is to prevent nation states fighting nation states. The mission of the global war on terror was to globally prosecute terrorist organizations. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Haqqani network.
Fast forward to the second Gulf War, then we had all these other factions that were out there, all who hate Americans, and they aren't wearing uniforms anymore. It isn't as easy to tell who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, because that woman walking with her kid through the market, she might have a bomb. You don't know.
George Bush said this war will be fought in the shadows. There are terrorist organizations who want nothing more than to kill tens of thousands of Americans, and will do so before they have their morning coffee.
There's no other special forces in the military. There's Special Operations Forces, SOF, which includes Rangers, SEALs, Air Force guys, and Marine Recon. But there's only one group of Special Forces guys, and that's the Green Berets. The main function was guerrilla warfare.
A Green Beret is not a Navy SEAL. Okay, let's just start there. Navy SEALs, great organization, but they're mostly a direct action force. When we have to go after bad guys and we want to shoot them all dead, they're very good at that. The mission of Army Special Forces of the Green Berets is unconventional warfare.
The name 10th Special Forces Group, they called it the 10th Group because they wanted the Soviets to think that there were 9 more Special Forces groups that existed that they didn't know about. When hostilities commenced, we were just going to disappear into the woods. We had civilian contacts, caches all over southern Germany. We literally had everything we needed to just lie in wait for them to get past us, and then as soon as they got past us, bam, we'd pop up in the rear areas, hit their supply lines, hit their communications hubs, and try to disrupt them as much as we possibly could behind their lines.
The nickname for Green Berets is the warrior diplomat. How do you train, equip, and deploy a foreign army on our behalf if they don't like you and if they don't trust you. So the very first thing that you have to do as a Green Beret is build trust.
You're probably going to eat some foods you normally wouldn't eat anywhere else. There's probably going to be some hygiene issues. You may get some food or a hookah pipe or a glass of tea with a pair of hands that may not be clean.
We had to go to this guy's house, and he made some sort of traditional Lebanese food. It was mystery meat. But yeah, we had to go ahead and eat it, and it turns out it was like tripe and just...
I went to Africa once, had dinner at a senior military leader's house, and talked all night about a delicacy. And it was a clay pot with some sort of, I don't know, like potato mush on the top, and in it was this like chili-like stew of meat. And it's Africa, everything's dirty. They don't use toilet paper in a lot of these countries, and everyone's eating with their hands. Green Berets got to eat that all day long until that foreign leader's tired.
Was it good?
It was okay. It was not good when I got back to my hotel room.
When you sit down at a meeting anywhere in Bosnia, the first thing you're doing is having a drink, period. And then when you're conducting business, you're drinking the whole time. We used to have our DDs when we went into these meetings, and it wasn't a designated driver. It was a designated drinker, because that was a guy who was actually going to sit down at the table with whoever the head was until he got tired of drinking Slivovitz.
The town I grew up in, central Indiana, typical Midwestern town of farmers and not much diversity, so I knew there had to be something else out there. And one of the things I like to do was to look at books about different places and different things. And one of my favorite articles I ever read was this one right here. And the article is about Green Berets in the highlands of Vietnam training these Montagnards, these native peoples, and how to protect themselves. And this here is Captain Gillespie right here. So you see him in these native clothing. And I said after reading that article, I want to be that guy one day. I actually met him years and years later, and I told him about this magazine. And I said, you know, when I read that magazine, I always wanted to be Special Forces, follow in your footsteps. And all he said to me was, you know how many times I've heard that story?
My dad took me to see the movie The Green Berets with John Wayne when I was a little tiny kid. And I came out of that movie theater, I looked at my dad and I said, I want to be a Green Beret. And that's it. I looked at all the things that they did and I was like, okay, so this is not like normal Army stuff. You're gonna do the direct action strike missions. You're gonna do snatch missions, trying to pull either hostages out or high value targets. You're gonna conduct intelligence gathering missions, reconnaissance missions. You get to do all of that.
I wanted to be a journalist. And then I see this piece with Geraldo Rivera out with an infantry squad, and they get in a firefight. He pulls out a pistol, and then they're running, and he falls down. And then all the guys are yelling at him, you idiot, why do you have a pistol? What's going on? And I'm like, whoa, I can't be that guy. No way. I need to be the other guy. And then I read a couple of books about the invasion into Afghanistan, and there were these guys with beards, long hair, riding horses through the desert, and they were fighting the Taliban and going after Al-Qaeda. And I said, that's what I gotta do. I gotta go be a Green Beret.
The horse soldiers, I mean, those guys are just, they're awesome.
When I came in, you had to be a sergeant. So you couldn't come in off the street as a private. So you had to have already been in the Army for a few years. And I think when I was young, I think it took about 3 years to become a sergeant. And then you applied. You went to airborne school if you weren't airborne qualified, and then you went to Special Forces school. So you already had a certain amount of maturity and experience because you've been in the Army 3 years or even longer.
They needed to ramp up the special operations capability and more Special Forces groups. The thing that they came up with was, okay, let's open it back up again to guys off the street. So they did. And guys like me got to enlist off the street to be a Green Beret, which made me what they call an SF baby.
There's a few ways that you can go into Special Forces. I was an officer, so there's really only one way to do that, and that's you have to serve first in the regular Army. We select Green Berets based on character. That is the most important aspect when it comes down to assessment and selection. And the Army calls it VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's a doctrinal term. That's the world that you live in as a Green Beret. That's the world that we live in as civilians. It's just the reality is how many people build their teams and build their organizations to actually operate in a VUCA environment.
When I went through in the 80s, it was basically 3 phases. So you would go to phase 1, you would do small unit tactics, you would live in a very austere environment. There was very few buildings, if you wanted to call them buildings. They were literally 2x4s with tar paper. They weren't warm in the wintertime and they weren't cool in the summertime. Phase 2 is more classroom.
I don't think the training got any less intense. It just got reorganized is what happened. So in the late 80s and early 90s, someone in their infinite wisdom said, you know what, let's change things. Let's make the job portion the first part of the Q course, and we'll take the basic skills and make them the second part of the Q course, along with phase 3 with the culmination. And the bad thing about that is you can have people that are book smart, that can pass the job portion, but when you ask him to navigate from point A to point B, he can't find his ass, with both hands.
The training process for Green Berets, first of all, it's going to take time. So there's some values that are called Special Operations Forces truths. So we're going to invest in people. If you don't have high quality people assessed on character, it doesn't matter how good your equipment is, it's not going to work well. You do go through a very vigorous psychological assessment. There's 5 or 6 of them that get taken. But then we put people in scenario-based evaluations.
Phase 3 is the capstone exercise called Robin Sage. And Robin Sage is the best exercise you ever do. You parachute in with about 110, 20, 30 pounds in the middle of the night in some field in North Carolina somewhere up in the mountains. The fictitious country we're in is called Pineland. You get to a guerrilla base and then you spend about a day or 2 trying to build rapport with the guerrilla chief. You learn about, do they have an auxiliary? Do they have an underground network? And they do. You have local people that are either hired or volunteer to help run these exercises. I think Robin Sage was about 2.5 weeks maybe.
You're essentially role playing this in North Carolina for 2.5 weeks.
Right, and all of the guerrillas are also role playing. Like our guerrilla chief turned out that in real life he owned a big chicken ranch. He had been doing this for generations. He probably knew more about running a guerrilla organization than I did. I did Thai and Russian. My Thai's okay. It was much better before until I got lazy since I retired. Russian was much more difficult.
My German, it used to be great. It isn't as good anymore because I've been gone from there for over 20 years.
My language was Russian, so I spent 6 months learning Russian.
Do you still speak any Russian?
I do not.
I was the communications guy on the team, so I had to, 6 weeks for 8 hours a day, we just learned how to do Morse code. Most boring thing you could ever do in your life. No one really wants to be the commo guy because you got to carry those heavy radios, the generators, the batteries. You do have stereotypes with people. So the medic on the team is usually the smartest guy. The engineer guy is arguably maybe the second smartest guy.
So we take this math test. Well, those that did well on the math test got to be engineers. Those that did poorly on the math test wound up being commo guys. Thank God I did well on the math test because I did not want to be a commo guy. Every time we did commo cross training, like we were doing Morse code training, and you hear this, I'm like, make it stop. Yeah, so that's how I got to be an engineer.
What does an engineer do?
So you get to build things and destroy things. Building is okay, destroying is a lot of fun. So my favorite explosive is C4. C4 plastic explosive. And that's just because it is really versatile. It is an extremely powerful explosive too. So you've got TNT, which is kind of like the baseline. So C4 is about 1/3 more powerful than TNT is. Or ammonium nitrate, which is one of the terrorists' favorite explosives because it's so readily available. That is about half as powerful as TNT.
Yes, it looks very familiar. It looks very cold.
So were you doing stuff like this?
Yeah, so this is mountaineering. So they're rigging some sort of equipment belay. I spent my 3 years as a Special Forces detachment commander, so the tactical level is called an ODA, so 12-man team, and we were a mountaineering team. So we spent plenty of time in the summer doing mountaineering work and climbing, and then in the winter we got to go up there again and sleep in the snow and conduct ice climbs and glacier traverses, because you got to be able to operate in all terrains.
My favorite Special Forces group to work with is the Thais, for sure. This was in 1988. This is me right here. Wow, I really look young. This was up in the North Thailand near Laos. We were over there trying to train in mountain operations in communications. Certainly in Thailand, Special Forces are probably the best in the region, Thai Special Forces, hands down.
I loved working with the Germans because they were great. We worked with their Gebirgsjägers, which is their mountain infantry guys, with their airborne troops a lot, because we would do jump fests with them where we would jump for their wings and they would jump for our wings. We'd swap equipment out and airplanes and everything else. Yeah, they were always really professional, really good at what they did.
The Canadian Special Forces, the British, the Australians, some European countries, especially the Baltics and the Nordic states, have very, very capable and very proficient special operations capabilities that work hand in hand with our special operations units, and there's seamless integration in a lot of fronts.
Dipping was a big deal, so you had to be careful when you picked up any cup, can, or whatever. It was everywhere. It was kind of the thing. If you didn't do it, you kind of got looked at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the old 5-minute break, smoke them if you got them. Yeah, that was like all the time.
Less smoking, more chewing tobacco, dip. I somehow made it out of the military with no tattoos and no tobacco. So I'm rare.
We're not going to go through the whole thing, man.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, those brave men of the Green Beret.
You know the words to this?
Yeah, everybody knows the words. Sing this to your kids.
That's our anthem. If we have a funeral, Ballad of the Green Berets always winds up getting played. Because if you listen to the words of the song, I mean, it's about a guy that, you know, winds up going in the Army Special Forces, becoming a Green Beret, and gets killed.
So he says he has died for those oppressed. Deo preso liber. That's the motto of the Green Berets, to free the oppressed. Go to places where people need help. That existed when this song was written by Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler many decades ago, and that's our mission today.
I never knew challenge coins existed until I got the first group. And this is the one that my team sergeant gave me. It says SFODA 174, which was a Halo team. When I got on the team, my team sergeant, Kenny Rappel, actually should never drop a coin because it means you challenge somebody. So if you didn't have this coin or carry this coin with you, and someone pulled out their coin, you had to buy everybody around the drink, and vice versa.
This is the one that I currently carry with me. It's kind of cool.
You always carry one on you?
Oh, yeah. You don't go anywhere without a coin, because nobody likes paying for all the drinks at the bar. We had a guy that would actually take his coin with him in the shower. Started out keeping it in the soap dish. And then somebody dug on him because they said, oh, well, you didn't have it on your person. So he decided that the perfect place to carry his coin was between his butt cheeks. Somebody would always walk into the shower and coin you while you're in the shower, and he'd just kind of squat down a little bit and release tension, and coin would drop out.
There's all sorts of coins. Everybody's got their own version, but these are some of the coolest ones that I have. The most important thing about the coin is it's got to be designed by the commander. Secretary of Defense Chris Miller made this one. He was one of the first guys into Afghanistan post 9/11. This is the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Don't tell anyone, I'm not really supposed to have this one.
Nowadays, everybody has coins, and they're pretty. This is even the first group coin now. I mean, look at that thing. In a heartbeat. 1,000 times over, no doubt. When I see them on TV or if I make a trip down to Fort Bragg, I want to be right there again.
Absolutely. It's the best job I ever had in my entire life, and I would not trade it for anything. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would.
I would absolutely go back and be a Green Beret again. If I could do it right now at 40, however I am, 44, yeah, I'd do it again. It's the best job in the world. You get to go solve the nation's most complex challenges with little to no guidance and oversight. And people at the most strategic levels of our government make decisions based on what you tell them. You're part of something way more massive than any one person.